Hello friends and welcome to the Southern Mountain Kitchen. Today we're going to make a one skillet meal out of beef with peppers and onions. So we're going to start with some rice. Now this does not have to be a part of this meal unless you want it, because once you make this beef with peppers and onions, you can actually serve it over the rice. This is optional, so this is kind of outside of the one skillet. So basically, you know that if you're taking a half a cup of uncooked rice, adding a cup of water to it and some salt, and then boiling it for the time it says on the directions, you're going to get at least a cup worth of rice out of this finished at the end to use it on your plate. So it's your choice if you want to use this or not. It's up to you. But we're going to start with everything you see on the counter right here. This is everything that you need to make this beef with peppers and onions, and it has such an amazing taste. And yes, you do see honey there. That honey just gives this sweet edge that just makes everything so much different, so much better. It's one of those things that if you want to try something with a sweet taste on beef, this is a good place to start, because you can control the honey and how much it's going to be sweet. But what you see here is what we're going to use. There really isn't a lot to this, and it's actually kind of an easy thing to make that I just made up in the kitchen one day just because I wanted to try something different. But wow, it was so great to eat. So we're going to start out with a medium onion, which we're going to cut up into slices. Now, depending on if you like a lot of onion or whatever, you can use more or less of this. When you're cutting it up, it's your decision how thin you want these slices to be. If you like thick slices of onion, that's perfectly cool. Otherwise, you know, if you want thin ones, you can cut them into thin slices. But we're going to cut this up, and then we're going to break these up, because we don't want to just like throw them into a pan in a big lump, because they're not going to cook right. You need to really break your onion up before you actually get to the skillet. So go ahead and break these slices up, so that way they really do have an even chance to cook when they get into the pan. Because otherwise, if you just throw them in as whole hunks, the outside's going to cook, the inside probably not so much. So just go ahead and break them up to give them a chance to do what they need to do, and just work your way through it. Now, as I said, you can control how much onion you put in this. I'm using about a medium onion. You could use less if you want. Now, we're using beef in this, which basically I have a little over a pound here. Whatever beef you want to use is your choice. Just make sure that it's something that you can cut into strips, because what we're going to do is cut this whole thing into strips, which we want to cut them to where they're probably about like 2 to 3 inches long or whatever. But as you're cutting through it, there's going to be fat in your meat. It's going to happen. And if you have really huge pieces of it, you might want to consider cutting some of that out, because you really don't want it all to hit into what we're going to cook. But just go ahead and cut through it. Do the best you can to cut with this. Now, mine just came from the store, so mind you, it wasn't frozen. It doesn't have any stiffness to it, so that makes it a little bit of a joy to cut sometimes. However, if you had yours in the freezer and you brought it out and you let it thaw for a while, but it's not completely like thawed out, just kind of like crystallize a little bit, that is so much easier to slice. If you have a good knife, it works too. My knife is really good. It's just the fact that when you get some beef, it's just a chore to cut sometimes. So just go ahead and slice through this as best you can. And like I said, once you get it cut up, we're just going to make sure that you have these in some decent strips. And then we're going to use this just as is, cut up. Not much else you have to do to it from that point forward, but just work your way through the whole thing. Now, with what I've got here, like I said, this is like easily, I don't know, maybe a pound and a quarter worth of beef here. This is easily enough to feed 2 people. The more people you have, you can multiply this recipe to actually feed more people. It's just one of those, you need to actually kind of pay attention to how many people you're trying to feed and what you got going on. So when I was making this, I was aiming for at least 2. But this is a healthy meal for 2 people, because you're going to have quite a bit of beef into it. So we're going to start out with our skillet on medium-high heat, and we're using a large one. We're going to put in at least 3 or so tablespoons of olive oil. We want to heat this to medium-high because we want to get it really cooking here and get it really hot. So we're going to put the onions in first and let them start doing their thing, because we're going to cook these for about 3 minutes to maybe 4 minutes before we do anything else. But we want to get the temperature up in here, get these vegetables going before we bring the meat into the mix. So just go ahead, get your onions in, move around, get them coated in the oil. Now, we're not trying to cook them completely in 3 to 4 minutes. It's not going to happen. We're going to add some other things as we go along, because we are going to bring in like the green peppers. So add them too, and that's like, mine were frozen. So we just want to keep cooking with these and the onions, because these are going to continue to cook once we put the beef in. So go ahead and mix them in, get them coated in oil, and just thaw them out a little bit before the beef comes into the picture. So stir them up a little bit, and then as they come up to temperature, then we're going to consider adding our beef to this. So as you can see, the onions are already on their way to going to being translucent, which is good. But the best thing is all this stuff can cook together, and it works best that way, just to actually let everything marinate, cook, and work as it goes. So once your beef is in the pan, we want to mix this in with the onions and the peppers so that way they can share that flavor and start getting them up to temperature to where they're going to start to turn brown. So we want the beef pieces to brown as we're cooking, but we're also going to add some seasoning here. So to this, we're adding at least a tablespoon of steak seasoning. Now this is just any kind of steak seasoning you want to use. And then we're using a half a teaspoon of salt and a half teaspoon of pepper. And mix that through because we want to make sure all that seasoning goes throughout all the beef, all the onions, all the peppers while we're doing this. And just keep stirring it around because we want to keep cooking this, like I said, until your meat starts to brown and actually stops looking like it's got that little pinkish quality to it. So just keep working it through the pan. And just keep going with this. Now, as you can see, there is some liquid accumulating in the bottom of the pan, and that's going to come from like the vegetables because they were frozen, but also some of it comes out of the meat. If you get to a point where you have way too much of this, you can take some of it out along the way. And right now we're adding at least 1.5 tablespoons of minced garlic. And we're going to mix that through to make sure that it cooks in. But we're going to add some other things as well. So just get that stirred up into it first. And make sure that your temperature is actually staying really high on this because you really want the temperature to cook through everything as we're going here. We don't want anything like, medium heat, or we want to go towards high for this. And as it's simmering, we're going to add at least a tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce and a tablespoon of soy sauce. And I'm using dark soy sauce. And just get that in there and mix that through as well. Because we want these to cook in, because they're going to give a lot of flavor to what we're cooking here. Because a lot of this is building flavor, because as you're adding these different things to it, you're giving it so much to work with all the other things between peppers and everything else. That's just all of these flavors work together. And now we're going to add in a half of a cup of roasted red peppers. Now these come in really long strips. If you want to break them up, you can. You can actually do this while you're stirring this up, because I did it a couple times, because some of these are really long. But once you get this in here, we're going to let this cook for a while. I give it at least 5 minutes for all these things to kind of work and mix together and just get all these flavors really flowing through it. So stir it around from time to time. Make sure that everything kind of gets moved around a little bit so that way all of it works. Now, we're going to bring the honey in. This is where you can control this. I'm going to put in the equivalent of probably like 2 tablespoons or so of honey. You can use more, you can use less, but this is going to give it a sweet quality. So if you just want a hint of sweet, use a tablespoon plus. If you want it really sweet, go over 2. And once you get that in, you want to mix it through so it mixes with the liquid that's already in the skillet. So that way this doesn't like crystallize, set up shop, or do whatever. And just keep mixing this through until it goes through all of it. And it'll dissolve into what you're mixing here. It's going to work with the fluid that's still in the pan. That's actually going to make everything work together to taste so great. And you get this like hint of sweetness to all these peppers and onions and everything seasoning we put in it already. It's an amazing taste. And it's just one of those things where if you don't try it, you don't really understand it. But when mine was done, it looked something like this, and this was so great to eat, especially when you serve it over the rice. It just tastes really wonderful. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, please like and subscribe. And if you get a chance, check out the Southern Mountain Kitchen website, where you can get a free recipe, check out the cookbooks available from the Southern Mountain Kitchen, and if you'd like to, you could order a cookbook at a discounted price, cheaper than Amazon, with shipping that is also cheaper than Amazon. So if you get a chance, check it out, and I hope you have a great day.